What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for season 8, the first one of many. And today I am joined by the former news team lead, Speed Demon. Speed, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Drafts are done or over with. The league is really starting to, come to the season beginning, and I'm excited and also a little surprised in how some of these teams shook out and and how they're looking right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew that coming into it that you were no longer GM, so you actually got to experience the draft. So just a quick thing, because we're actually going to get into it. We're only going to talk about provisional, novice, and prospect for this podcast, and then we'll do challenger through Titan another day. But you're part of the prospect, part of the free agent pool. Did you know the Rooks were going to pick you up, or were your hands just up in the air? And said, who wants me?
Um, yes and no. So the I believe it was the day after, or 2 days after. I was no longer a GM. I messaged Bubbly. Bubbly was the first GM I had, and back in season 5, I had just missed out on the draft because I joined literally the day after the draft. Um, they still didn't have a full roster, pick me up, and I was there. So I had messaged Bubbly about coming back, but that was literally 2 days after they announced new GMs, and Bubbly and I hadn't talked about it since. So I was going to all these tryouts, and no one made it clear, or obvious that they were looking to draft me, or that they were definitely going to draft me if I was on the board, or anything like that. So going into it, I had no idea until I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the draft board in round number 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, Rooks have 2 picks within like 3 picks of each other at like 18, 5 picks of each other within like 18 and 23, where they're 2 picks. And I was like, I could see myself going at 18. Um, I played with Chiefs, who was on the Rooks already, and I was like, yeah, Bubbly and I have talked. Chiefs and I have team in another league already, so we'll see. Pick 18 comes, and they decide to go with someone else. And by go with someone else, I mean go with someone that was 3 MMR away from mine. So I'm like, oh, okay, I guess, they wanted to go in a different direction. Not a big deal. And then pick 22 comes around, and mind you, they had 23, and I get a DM from Bubbly himself, and he goes, "You ready to come back home and play for the Rooks?" And I was like, "Yes." So I did get a one pick advantage, knowing that I was going to be drafted. But other than that, I had no idea up until that point.
That's a cool moment. Because personally, myself, I was never drafted. I've been here since season 3. So I always wanted to know what people's thoughts are. Like, oh, I'm drafted, But we'll talk a little bit more about prospect later on the podcast. But we're gonna start down in the Provolone League, the newest league here in Nemesis. The MMR boundaries are from 835, which that's Diamond 1. That's really low, in my opinion. I mean, it opens up the community up more, but that's really low. To 1185, which that's kind of the middle-ish of not prospect, novice of last season. But just going off that speed, I know you're not a part of that at all whatsoever, GM or anything, but what are your thoughts on the new league? Do you think it's going to be a success, failure? What do you think?
I I'm not I'm not entirely sure yet on how it's gonna work out. Because they are just 3-man rosters, so leaves a lot more room for having issues, players not making games, whatever the case may be. So other than that, though, I think it's good. It expands our MMR availabilities in the league. It allows us to be able to recruit more people, get more people in here, and hopefully next season get a sixth full league. And you know, we're covering a lot of people. Once you hit, at least people that are hitting diamond, uh, are playing all the time. Most of them, you're real. That's right where most of the people really like to play Rocket League, play it all the time. We're trying to have fun, trying to get better. Your gold and belows, they're just like, oh yeah, gold. I'll play it every once in a while, type of thing. So I think being able to expand the league's MMR all the way down to that Diamond 1 level, rank is definitely gonna be huge. I'm just a little scared on how the league itself is gonna go with only having three-man rosters, and I know it's an experimental league, but, I'm still really curious on how that's gonna, all fold out.
Yeah, like you were saying, the three-man teams. I think that's interesting. I know we didn't have enough people to actually have a fourth person on the team, which is understandable with the rank range and us not really recruiting in that range because most of the league isn't in that range at all. Everybody's more unless champ or above. So that's something to look interesting. Well, look into. But going into the draft, realistically, people did tryouts. I don't think other than, like, maybe the top 5, 6, you didn't really know who you're getting. 'Cause, there's just a lot of people, and at that point, kind of a crapshoot. Can you find that diamond in the rough for that rank? Because it's just such a huge gap from the 835 to 1185. And with the first pick, Lasagna Man, I think that's how they pronounced it on stream. I'm not exactly sure, but he went to Jesters. I don't know much about him, Speed. I know you probably have no idea who that is, but yeah, he was the first ever to be drafted in the league. So, I mean, what just out of your opinion, how would you feel if you were the first ever draftee for a league? Would it be excitement or would it be like, I gotta live up to, the number one overall pick?
Uh, really put him on the spot. I don't know. I
Yeah.
never even thought about that. That's a very, unique question, but um, I guess it would depend on the situation. If this was me, I would probably feel excited. Mostly excitement that, in this new league that, I was able to be drafted number one, that, I was a high priority um player because I'd been in the league before and people knew me and people trusted in me that I would be able to get this job done in this new league and with the new boundaries. Um, Now, if it was someone new who came in and had never played in the league before, but teams were holding a lot of tryouts and everyone was like, "Yo, like I'm mad I don't have pick number one. Like I know this guy's gonna go number one." Um, but he was new to the league. I would probably be a little nervous. Be like, "Look, I've never played in this league before. I don't know any of the other competition, but everyone's wanting me. So, like, am I really that good? Am I really gonna make that big of a difference? Like now I have to versus like, Lasagna Man, he's been in the league before. He knows what a lot of these players in this league can do as they are all returning. Most of them are returning players from Nemesis, and have been drop downs from the novice league.
Yeah, going off that point of, some veterans coming down like Crispy, Couts Hearted, Django, Fly Penguin, Lucky, Cool Socks, the list goes on in that league. But a lot of these people though in the league, it's their first time ever even in a league. And so, and I know it's an experimental league, but it's for them to actually realize that the competition in league is a lot better than just you queuing up in a comp game and playing for 5 minutes or however long the comp game is. But there's not really too much to talk about though in the Provolone League, as it is an experimental league, and we just gotta wait and see. Especially with these three-man rosters, we can't really accumulate some predictions because it's all up in the air right now, as everything in the preseason is. So I'm not gonna say, oh, my team, because I actually have a team called the Wolfpack. That no, they're gonna be the best. You can't really do that right now, especially with the MMR range. You just have to wait and find out. Do you have any final thoughts about this new Provolone League, Speed, or just anything at all?
Uh, Not really with the Provolone League. I will say one thing. I'm really surprised Chris B didn't go number one. Um, Chris B is probably the most mechanical uh provolone player. Um, I mean, I look at him and I'm a prospect player, and sometimes I feel like he has better mechanics than me. But
Feel that.
he also I feel like likes to just joke around and have fun and can just get into that chasey mindset, and his rotations aren't there, which is in my opinion what holds him back from being able to stay a novice or even move up into the prospect league because his mechanics are pretty good. I've seen him flip reset. I've seen him, easily hit double taps, corner reads, and you don't see that very often in the novice league. Maybe now this year you will with the MMR boundaries, but the previous novice league you didn't really see players like that. Um, you know, and so I'm really surprised that that's how that happened. But
Yeah.
um, and other than Lasagna Man, 2 and 3 is definitely how I would have expected to be 1 and 2 with Crispy Waves and Cowtarded. Cowtarded use having once been a prospect player.
May the
Back in the
mighty have
days,
fallen.
MMRs were a little different, but he has fallen and then has fallen down even more. So um, he has what it takes. He just doesn't play as much anymore, and so I definitely, it surprised me that Crispy wasn't 1 and Cal wasn't 2, but they're still both right up there. And
I'm just looking at the free agent list here for a second, and so we're gonna move on. I see BMAT, the former Firestorm org GM, is still on there, and your boy Squaddles. So guys, if you're looking for a player, definitely check out those two players. They're
and
very
even
pog.
Cyclone.
Yeah,
Cyclone's got
Cyclone
a
too.
lot of novice experience. I've thought he was pretty good in the past in the novice league. And Griffin. Griffin, I mean, I don't think Griffin played last season. I could be wrong, but I've seen Griffin before. I've had to use Griffin as a sub, a free agent sub in TSL back when I played in TSL. I had to use him, and he's a great player too. So a couple players to look out for in that free agents list if your team is not doing well, um, through the first couple preseason games because they do have 4 preseason games before they start their season.
Yeah, that's a lot of preseason games. I mean, I understand it's an experiment, but personally, I think four is a little bit too much. I think I would rather have bye weeks, but nonetheless, you're trying to keep the community active and involved. And going on that point, so keeping activity rolling, gonna go to the novice league where it's really starting to ramp up this season. It's the no longer well, it is I guess still the lowest league, but not anymore. So we got novice with the MMR boundaries are they're actually higher, a lot higher than I thought they were gonna be. 1186 to 1350. That's a huge difference. So you have the bottom of prospect basically from last season, and now they're novice. So you're going to see probably a lot more mechanics in novice league, and you're a lot less novice moments. You'll still have a few, but you'll have some novice moments and speed. I understand, you like your boy Psycho still. I know you're not in the org anymore, but what are your thoughts on Psycho? On the Ninjas, I guess your former team, and just overall novice, and who do you think your top three teams
Um, you know, I don't know anything about the 2 draftees that Psycho picked up for the Ninjas and came in, or Mr. Ice, Mr. X Ice. I don't even know how you would pronounce his name or he wants to pronounce, but him and Flight Knight, they're gonna be a dangerous duo. For that Ninjas team, they're definitely gonna really be a dangerous duo. Flight Knight
That's it.
has really really proved himself last year, and has looked really good. And Psycho, dropping down from the prospect league, he was the sub for me last year on my prospect team. He picked up a lot of experience last year, and the MMR boundaries it's massive, and it got a lot of these lower level prospect guys who were the bottom of prospect last year and wasn't able to repeak or barely repeaked, and now they're sitting back down in novice, which everyone always tried to get out of novice. So that the biggest thing for those guys is the mentality of those guys dropping back down from prospect after finally getting out of novice, which I know so many people are always so excited to do. Like I know I was, and I got scared when I saw the boundaries went up and they were in the 1300s. As soon as I read 1300, I didn't want to look at the last 2 numbers because I know I didn't peak too much higher than I peaked like 60 mmr higher than what I was from last season. So I got a little scared, but um, novice. I do want to start off with number 1 pick being Rooney coming up from Rockerman. Uh, I expected that. The man had stolen the award show. Um, it might even be renamed to the Rooney Show next year. I'm not sure yet. Um, but that man popped off, and I think personally he should be a prospect player, if not even challenger player with the mechanics he has. So I'm going to start off right now. I'm going to say Genesis is going to be a contender. You got Rooney on the team. He's going to look really good, and I got to give it to the ninjas as well. I really think Psycho and Flight Night, they're going to be able to do some damage, and I hope their subs and their fourth players, their third and fourth player, I don't know anything about. I hope they can fit in well with them. I know Psycho knows how to do his research, so I'm assuming he definitely knows something about him. And then just looking at these other rosters, I'm gonna give you the Whelps, C Money, been in prospect for a couple seasons, dropping down, being one of those guys. He has what it takes to compete, and the Whelps is gonna be looking like a good team. And I'm gonna have to go with my own org from this season as well, the Pawns. Those are gonna be your top four runners in my opinion to start the season. Mr. Silent, having a great year last year. Um, Mallow looked really good last year. I know they were a scary team at the end of last year, and then you add in removing Pillow, who I always thought has been a great novice player myself. So I think those three players. I don't know much about Septune, but I think those are definitely going to be your four front runner teams here in novice.
Yeah, fair enough. And we're just gonna change gears a little bit. We're actually gonna talk a little bit more on the draft portion of it. Because I mean, I have to say Frost is, my number one team, of course. Like that's my own team. You have Icarus, Sky Newbie, and Izzachad, which Izzachad I drafted second overall, and I think he was a steal at his MMR at 1272. I don't know what you think, but that's a hell of a hell of a pick, in my opinion. But we got is a chat number 2. We have Brindy the Blade at number 3. Vita going back to Ignite. They had to use that pick again. Stellar 5, Dre 6, and then Jorbich 7, and then I had pick 8 with Sky Newbie. K-Man at 9, and we're gonna stop at 10 with Twisted Hydro. Those were the top 10 novice picks for the season. The names that stand out to that list are Rooney, Is a Chad, Vita, Jorbich. I think those are your top people out of those 10 that people were like really see. I mean, you can even put Brindy in there as 5. So those are my top 5 picks out of the top 10 if you want to, make that a thing. The draft overall though, I think it was interesting. I mean, everybody kind of knew who the top people were going to be, like Rooney, is a Chad, Brindy, Vita. And then you had to start really thinking about who do I want on my team? Because you always got to do the MMR restraints, and novice is kind of one of those tricky leagues to where you either have a really good player or a really bad player. You have to figure out the balances and how to really draft a team based on MMR as well, because you can't have a 1300 plus on a novice roster now and them being really bad, because that kind of sabotages your team a little bit. But what are your thoughts on the top 5 or even 10 picks, Speed? Do you think that the people I said are your standouts, or do you have anybody else in mind?
Um, I know you probably don't know him very well, but Twisted Hydro,
I know.
coming in at ping number 10. Uh, I play with him in another league. He's in my league in the other league. He's on the bottom half of that league, obviously, because he's a novice in this one and I'm in prospect. Um, but there's times where, he is more mechanical than I am. He's a very good player. He's a smart player. Um, he calms, like he's the player you want. He's just not always that consistent. So I'm glad he made the switch over to come to Nemesis and try out Nemesis. He was in the league last year. He joined midway through, didn't get picked up or anything, but um, I'm glad he made it in the top 10. I'm glad he went to tryouts. I'm glad he got drafted, but I think he's gonna turn some heads at the beginning of the season because not a lot of Nemesis guys know him from RLPC.
Yeah, he's on the Thrashers this season in RLPC, which I do know who that is. Believe it or not, I have my eyes and ears everywhere for decent players, and that definitely came to mind when I was thinking about drafting a team. But I decided to go a little bit of a different route. to a little bit more established players in the Nemesis community. But on that note, Speed, I got one final question for you for the Novice League. Who do you think dropped more than you thought they were going to?
Um, Taking a look at this list, and you know, it might be a little biased here. Um, mm, yeah, gonna be a little biased here, but old teammate of mine when I first joined the league is Sage. Sage coming in the second round at pick number 20, being a prospect player. I know he doesn't play too often anymore, but you know, Sage knows how to get it done. He won for you in novice 2 seasons ago now, back in season 6, right? Was it 6? No, that
Three
was season
seasons now.
5.
Wow,
Yeah,
three.
that was back in season 5. So you know, that was my teammate to start season 5, and then, you know, he left and went over to you and ended up winning a championship. So Sage having what it takes to win a championship has already done it. Coming down from the prospect league from last season and then still going in the second round really, really did surprise me here. And you know, another one that I would have to probably throw out is uh DP Snail going at pick
Yeah, that's what I
39.
was. Yeah, I was gonna say DP Snail. I was surprised he dropped that far with his. I understand the MMR might be consideration because he is the top of the league, but he's an established player, which I was surprised he even dropped that far. If you want to build a roster around somebody, that would be a guy to build one around. I'm just surprised that he did drop that far. And who drafted him? I'm trying to look here. DP Snail.
DP Snail. Where did DP Snail go?
He
Let's
went.
look.
I don't see him. Where's he?
He's on acceleration, so he's with Threat, Erosa, and Fluffy.
That's an interesting roster. I kind of see where the weak link is, but I'm not gonna say because I'm not gonna be that guy. Um, Final thoughts, Speed, on novice in the draft.
Uh, you know, I think that, you know, I picked out 4 teams that I think are going to be good, but you know, I definitely think that this year this novice league is going to kind of be like last year's prospect league. Like there's going to be a lot of close races, a lot of good teams, anyone can beat anyone on every given night. Like I just don't think there's going to be like that team that you're going to be like, "Oh yeah, we got an easy week this week." Like no team's gonna be able to say that. Like I don't think there's gonna be any teams that's gonna be like, oh yeah, yeah, we play them in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Like that's gonna be a win. So definitely look out. I definitely expect, you know, a couple teams to come out really hot at the beginning of the season, then even cool off because they're riding that high too much, and these other teams that may have, you know, haven't quite figured out their system yet as a team are going to turn things around, you know, probably week 5, week 6. And, you know, you're going to start seeing it to really even out and having a lot of teams that are going to be sitting at that like 8-8 record by the end of the season.
And on that note, Speed, we're gonna head to our final league for this podcast, which is going to the Prospect League. Now, this is our home league, me and you. And if I'm at the pace where I'm at, it will not be my league anymore. It will be novice at this rate. But nonetheless, let's talk about it. I had the first overall pick, and I traded it away to Rogue, and he got the guy that I was going to draft, Critter, which he's a very good player. He is the absolute top of prospect, 1500 MMR right on the dot. And for those that are wondering, the MMR boundary is 1351 to 1500 on the dot. So that's pretty crazy. That's a huge jump from even last season. The boundaries are raising once again. And you see a lot of these challenger players, you know, they got down. They moved down. The bottom of challenger moved down, and the people that were gonna jump the challenger are now in prospect because once you're a prospect, you're always a prospect. You can't go up.
Yep. I'm learning that.
Yeah, I'm learning the same thing as well. I might be a novice soon, so I guess I wouldn't be 100% right either. But nonetheless, though, top. I was go top 5 picks. Critter, Turbo, not Pulsa. Jaegers, Shorts, and Oinko. Out of this top five speed, who's your standout player?
Uh, probably I'm gonna have to probably go with Jaegers. Jaegers has had, you know, quite the seasons and the runs. In the Challenger League, being a drop down, being, just under that very top of prospect. I think he's a 1494 or 1496 or something like that on the sheet. Um, and having the experience that he's had, and not only that, but he was a starter in the Challenger League last year. Um, and making it into the playoffs, having a deep run like they did, that's going to be huge for the Wyverns team. Um, you know, his experience is just going to be unreal. You could say the same about Oinko, but Oinko wasn't always a starter during that season. He started when he had some team issues with players being suspended or not able to make games. He would start, but he was primarily the sub on that team. So people are like, well, you could say that about Oinko, but he wasn't necessarily a starter like Jaegers was, and Jaegers got the full experience of what the Challenger League was like last season.
Yeah, and they made a deep run in the playoffs as well on Ascension. I know Jaegers was on the Murley and Rockerman train there, and they eventually lost to the eventual winners of the Raptors. But in prospect speed, I see a couple good teams actually, and I see a couple rough teams around the edges a little bit. But I'll start with mine. I think Minotaurs definitely have a lock with me because they have Critter, Rogue, and then Sabungi. Who would have? I mean, I kind of seen it coming, but Bungie rounding out that roster for only three people on the roster, so can't find anybody for a fourth as they don't have anybody in the free agent pool to pull from with the MMR range. I see them being a contender, and then I see Vipers also becoming a contender. Vipers never seem to go away. I always feel like they somehow find a decent or even a good roster to run with for the season, but I got Minotaurs and Vipers speed. What do you got?
Uh, I'm definitely gonna have to agree on both of those as well. Critter, Rogue, Zambungi does scare me. You know, with them only having three players though over on the Minotaurs. Hopefully they can find a fourth because you kind of really need it, especially in the prospect league. If teams aren't working out, your team's not working out, and you need to make a change, or um, if they can't, have a hard time with their schedules. I don't know what all their schedules are like, and being able to agree and come to agreements on times, and let alone agreeing with the other team on times while still um, fitting into their own schedule. But they're definitely going to look scary if they can figure it out and they can play well together. Um, you know, Critter has had several runs and has played really well in the prospect league. And Rogue, won the championship last year, and he didn't even play half the season, and he was looking really good at the end of the last season, getting back into Rocket League. And then Zabungi, great locker room guy. He's always gonna hype you up, no matter if you guys are down 10-0, if you're up 10-0. He's gonna bring the same energy, which I think is gonna be really good for Rogue because we know Rogue can be one of those guys that can kind of get down and mauled a little bit during a game. So you know the atmosphere of that team is going to be put together really well. And same thing with Vipers, Oinko and Rilo. Those two, they know each other. They play together with each other. They're both great players. And then you got Dukes, who is going to round out their starting lineup more than likely. And then you have Snipsy coming up from the Novice League, who has looked really, really good, especially at the end of last year in the Novice League, and he continues to get better. So you can't you can't dog those two teams for sure. Um, and then, I think Wyverns are gonna look good. Um, you have Jaegers and Hydro at the top of the league there. Jeff Masters made a huge push out of novice. He's now at 1390. He's peaked higher than me and almost to your peak, Dan. He's three away from your peak. So he's
Yeah.
continued to grind and get better. So I think those are definitely, looking at it, your top 3 teams, um, coming into the prospect season.
I think prospect. I think it's gonna be lopsided. I don't think it's gonna be as competitive as people think it's gonna be. I think you're definitely gonna have your top 3 teams, and then you're gonna have all your middle ground teams, and then you're gonna have 1 or 2 of those teams. It's like you're not good. That's what I think. I think prospect. I always think prospect's one of those weird leagues to where you definitely have your top, and then you have your bottom, and then you kind of have your battle in the middle. I just never see prospect as a full-on competitive league in a sense to actually having that mindset. But I could be wrong. This could be the season. And talking about Jeff Masters real quick, speed. He was on the Whelps last season, and by his peak, at this rate, me and you, I'll see you novice, and we can team up on Frost. How about that? Does that sound
Hey,
like a
no,
plan?
I'm working on it, bro. We gonna be peaking in within a month. I'll have a new peak, so it'll
Oh,
save me prospect for at least one more season because they keep raising this minimum up 70 MMR. So I don't see the next jump in prospect being higher than higher than 50 MMR. So if I can hit 1400, I think I'm saved for at least another season.
I don't know, speed. I think by this rate, me and you and novice would be pretty decent because that's how bad we are. We're dropping the novice. And Glaze just messaged me. Shout out to Glaze for recording this, by the way. He's here. He said he's in. Count him in. He wants to join us two on Frost. So that'll be a really good roster. But unfortunately, that will probably never happen. um, but Speed, what are your final thoughts on the first day of the draft with Provolone the prospect? Any good, any bad? Overall thoughts.
Uh, I think it's a lot of good thoughts. We saw a lot of draft activity, meaning not a lot of players resigned. A lot of people went into the free agency. Obviously, with the provolone, there was only one player already on a team. That Fly Penguin being a GM and in the league himself. So that was the only team that had a player on it going into the draft. Prospect, there was only 2 teams that had 2 or more players on their roster, one of them being Banshees, who had 3 returning players and was only finding a fourth. And the other, I forget who the other team was that had 2 players on the team going into it, but there was 15 or 16 players in the league already on a team, so we were drafting for like 46 spots or something in the prospect league, and I'm pretty sure the draft in the novice was pretty similar to that. A lot of people going into the draft, which is obviously being in a draft based league, you're looking at what people are really looking to do, enjoy the full experience of things. So you know we can sit here and we can look at players that we've known before, but off seasons come and gone. If you haven't played with them, you haven't seen them play, you don't know, you know how they're going to do, and teams having to get used to each other. So the first couple weeks are always really just trying to feel things out, and I'm really excited because all these teams really have seemed to be shooken up. You're seeing some new combos of players, that we haven't seen in the last couple of seasons. So it's definitely going to be fun and interesting, and I can't wait to get the season underway.
Yeah, I can't wait as well. Not necessarily for my sake and my team's sake, but my org's sake and for the league's sake. And on that note, I would like to thank you, Speed, for coming out today, as you are the only faithful to actually want to help record this podcast. And thank you, Glaze, for helping us with the recording of it. And I mean, I gotta contribute you. Yeah, you're not recording, we don't got a podcast. So thank you, Glaze, for recording. Thank you, Dan, for being yourself, and you're so lovely of a guy. Dan playing always rocks. Just ego myself a little bit, but I thank you guys for watching this little episode of the podcast from day one of the draft, provolone, novice, and prospect. Hopefully, we get a challenger through Titan podcast out, and we will see you guys on the next episode. And make sure you guys sign up if you haven't already, and follow, subscribe, like, whatever the hell social medias we got. Do whatever is necessary, and we'll see you guys next time.